Suara Inspirasi,
where every voice tells a story.
and every story will inspire you. So before the break, we were discussing in terms of how you select caregivers and how many of them are nannies versus nannies. And the reason why we were asking about the nanny side was because, hey, and you rightfully said, we're not as rough as men are not as rough as I initially thought. But what if like a disaster happens, right? Because of the fact that nannies are people too, and then not all children are created equal. Some could be a bit more difficult. What if, someone accidentally slaps someone or, gets a bit rough with a child? What are your, I guess, methods to combat that? What would seem like a disaster to a parent, right?
Sure, of course. I mean, that's always at the back of our minds, because we're parents too, and we also understand, right? Even with our own children, also it's challenging.
Correct.
And we're not just talking about intentional kind of things that might happen, but also unintentional accidents and things like that, right? So, first and foremost, I think we've never encountered such intentional cases of abuse or, hitting a child. And
So you
things
have
like
a
that.
zero.
Zero.
Wow.
Since we started, it's zero case of such incident. I think I have to attribute that to all the extensive checking that we've done, right? The background check.
And also the training,
psychometrics
probably.
assessment, also the training, right? Because we do teach them on, understanding children's psychology and their development milestone and what to expect, right? They even go through special needs children's training. So it's mandatory for all our caregivers, right? But anything can happen, and therefore we still do have our playbook, right? So first and foremost, I think the hourly updates that we have on our app, and that schedule for all caregivers to actually provide that update, that provides some kind of hindrance for anything intentional to happen.
I see.
Accidents may happen, child might fall or things like that, right? But parents can be updated very fast, and the caregivers are also trained in first aid and CPR, pediatric first aid to be very specific,
Okay.
right? So they can administer first aid first if, accidents and things like that. But if we talk about, intentionally hitting the child, abuse ke, yang itu we've never encountered before. But if that happens, then the parents can actually go and lodge a police report, with proof, and can take legal.
And you have SOPs for that as
We
well.
have SOPs and things like that. So actually, during the service, we have a support team that monitors all the services with the parents, right?
Okay.
So we have about 14 support customer service team who are basically, from our war room, monitoring services that are going on, who's not updating, and then calling the
It's
carers
like a call
up.
center?
It is.
Okay.
It is. So at any one point, there's always somebody looking into those kind of services as well, right? So that kind of minimize risk of anything happening lah. But in case if anything should happen, touch wood, we hope we'll continue with the zero cases. But that's that SOP of what to do, reporting to the admin, going to the police, and then
And red flags could be immediately discovered.
red flags can be immediately discovered. So I think that's the
I think that's the
point
key,
where
Halil.
yes,
That's the key.
That's the hindrance lah.
And the fact that you check in every hour
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
kind of curbs that.
Yes.
Makes it a lot more difficult for non-reporting
Correct. And
incidents.
we also, we also understand that, in certain situation, you might not get a caregiver who can adopt or adapt to certain type of children, right? So there is that part in the TNC where the caregivers can request to, leave the service, right? But of course, they cannot leave right away lah. And then we'll send a replacement. So that's the beauty of this, right? So if a caregiver feels that it's too much for her, or she really cannot handle, she can request to leave with all the with all the reasons, kan?
So NRD is a two-way thing.
It's a two-way thing, because we always believe that it has to be two ways comfort, right? You have to trust your caregiver, and the caregiver must also trust the parents. So at any one point, if the parents doesn't feel like the caregiver is doing a good job, then they can also release the caregivers early. But the caregiver can also say, maybe hari tu she's not feeling well, or she really cannot handle certain type of children. Then she can request to leave the job, and we'll send in another replacement. So we do that also.
Okay, interesting. Probably we could just move on to the next section about Nadira's role in so many other stuff.
A lot of us stuff, really.
Okay.
So, I think in Malaysia we know this, or not just Malaysia, like generally globally, but Malaysia, I guess, is a little bit more lagging behind. We don't have enough women in tech startups, right? You know this. I think she was mentioning to me earlier, this is Women's
Correct.
Week, right? And she's being called to do like multiple talks daily.
Yep.
Primarily, of course, you're running a very, very successful, or at least an emerging tech business, but at the same time, I don't think it's slim pickings, really.
Yeah.
Right? You've been on multiple sides of the equation. You've been on supporting founders as well. At one point in time, you've now been founders multiple times. Why is it? Why? And I like the fact that you mentioned earlier is because young women are making, new families and their priorities, obviously, when they're young, it's a young family, they're focusing on the family itself. You're helping that out with Kido Care, obviously. But why do you think we don't have enough females on this?
Many
What are the
reasons.
challenges?
I
What
think
are the challenges here?
Many reasons lah kan. I mean, I come from an engineering background, right?
Okay.
I graduated in electrical electronics engineering, right? And I see that majority of my friends who are female graduated with me actually did not want to go and work in engineering fields, right? They would rather all good also, but they'd rather work in a more comfortable environment, something that suits also the lifestyle of a young mother, and things like that. They go into education, lecturing, different departments like HR and things like that lah. Right? So they don't even want to come in and work in engineering kind of work, right? And then you have women who are in businesses, right?
Okay.
And they want to adapt technology or adopt technology, right? But it's also overwhelming for them, tau, because they don't come from technological background and they feel like there's just too much around them. Which one is good for them? Which one is relevant for them? So they don't know. Because sometimes, even if you cannot create technology, you can adopt and then you can build upon that technology, right? But then it's about, trying to find the right resources to develop that for you and things like that. So there are actually many women in businesses, but trying to find the technology that works for you, which one, and this whole, talk about technology is expensive, right?
Okay.
So it scares them. Nak cari, people who can talk technology, and these women, who are not from technology background, and when they talk about, to the technologies, right, to the techies, right, they cannot speak the same language. So it's always that kind of language barrier as well, lah.
Limitations
Right?
is kind of
Yes,
stuff.
limitations, right? Those are among those kind of issues.
But we're seeing less and less of this nowadays. More women are coming out
Of
and
course.
exploring stuff like that.
Of course.
What are the programs and stuff
think,
giving them, hey,
yeah.
I also can do this,
Inspiration is key lah, because at my time also there were hardly women founded startups, right? My times dulu women in tech businesses lagi lah susah nak cari, but now, right? So of course we have smaller pool, therefore there are lesser success stories, right? There are lesser women to be put there on the front for other women to get inspiration and get the know-hows and whatnot. So I think we see more programs right now, like sharing, bringing women who have done it, even sharing failures.
I think that's
of
important.
women.
That's the most important, sharing failures.
Yes, because sometimes when you talk about the success too much, right, it feels unattainable when you are at a starting.
Correct.
At a starting stage, right?
And also the pressure that
The
comes
pressure.
with it, right?
Correct? There you are. You talk about your success story and how you made it, but you don't really go into, the steps of actually, being there. So sometimes it's very, intimidating lah for the women. And hearing it from the boys alone pun rasa macam, but you don't go through the struggles I go through. You don't go
true.
through the challenges I go through. So it's always unattainable. So in programs sekarang, I think MAFCAP is leading a lot of women's program, getting more women out there speaking about their experiences. MAFCAP is doing that a lot. I think Endeavor is also doing a lot right now.
We've got
Endeavor.
Yes, Endeavor, a lot more NGOs that are tech related, kan? But I hope, and I wish there are actually more, larger kind of event that makes a conscious decision of putting more women on stage, because I still see in tech events, right, there are hardly also women speaking tau.
Correct. No, but slim pickings as well, right?
Slim pickings,
Yeah.
yes. But it doesn't matter. You still have to put a woman up there,
Yeah.
right?
No, I think naturally, okay, for example, when Endeavor tried to do a big women's event, partnering with an Indonesian fashion firm, you would call the same names, really, right? So I think it's because what I don't understand is, of course, there's social limitations in a sense where how we've grown up in a very, very Asian family is, the dad's the breadwinner, the mom takes care of the family, right?
Traditional
Now it's
stuff, yeah.
traditional, right? So now we're a bit more, I guess, homogenous, where women can be the breadwinner and fine. Man can still be a manny, right? As you
Yeah.
mentioned, right? Absolutely fine. But why is the propensity for a man to say, even though I'm a breadwinner, I will do it, take the risk, and the wife supports him and says, look, go ahead and take that risk? Do you see less of the husband supporting the wife? Is that also partly the reason why a woman who's married isn't willing to take that jump? Because she has less risk per se, right? Because if the husband is working full time,
and also
you should-
support,
yeah,
support,
Is it
right?
support?
And support and understanding that needs to increase, right?
I mean, generally, we still see that, unfortunately,
Oh.
right? That the women are not getting as much support
Oh,
from their own
Spouses.
families, right?
Mhm.
Not just their spouses, but their own families.
yeah.
And then it's also very natural for women to then, when you cannot get that kind of support, to withdraw and say, okay, I'll do this, part of my obligation or responsibilities, right? I think that has to be, changed. Although it is, gradually changing, right? It's gradually changing and it's getting better. I think the younger generation is more supportive of each other,
Yeah.
right? Younger generation.
Correct.
So that's a positive advancement lah, we can say. But I also feel macam, there's that pool of very eager to learn, wanting to do women to go into tech startups and whatnot, right?
Mhm.
But then that starting pool is big, but the funnel to actually having that woman starting the business or even growing, right? That becomes smaller, slimmer, throughout the whole journey.
Would you think programs like this for women, if it's been started earlier, probably in the university level, rather than after when they're out and all that, empowering this and giving them, having more programs for women, maybe in the third year or final year, and showing them that there's this kind of opportunity, more programs focus on during tertiary education. Would you think that will help?
If you ask me, I think it has to be started even earlier
Okay.
from school lagi kan.
Okay.
And I think it has to be addressed at multiple levels because, first you have to start with the inspiration, getting people to know, getting women to know, there are success stories. There are, people who can become mentors and people who can inspire to be, and just sharing that story, right?
Okay.
But at a certain point, there will have to be those enablers, right? Then you talk about, getting the funding, talking to angel investors and other type of investors, right? And that becomes like a second barrier into starting and growing their businesses, right?
Okay.
Because still, when you talk about financing and investing, women-founded startups are still getting less, right? Still unsuccessful, or mostly not very successful. And they, ask questions that normally men will not be asked, right? I mean, I've gotten those kind of questions throughout my whole journey, right?
Yep.
So even in my, previous fundraising journey, I had, investors asking me about, how can you commit yourself to this when, you're a mother and you have 6 children, how are you going to commit to this? I mean, you will never ask a man that
Yeah, that's
question,
true.
right? No matter how many
That's true.
children you have.
Yeah.
That's true,
Right?
yeah.
You
Or
don't
how many
even
wives.
know. Yeah. You don't even know whether the fellow has children or not have children, right?
And
Or
that
wife.
wouldn't even cross their
Wouldn't
mind,
even
right?
cross your mind.
Yeah.
But they would ask the woman.
Sure.
But, so many women would take that to heart as if it's a challenge to their gender, right? And always have that in their heads that, and these are the questions that they're going to get. And this is something that is attacking me as a woman. I personally have moved on from that. I take those questions as questions from the ignorant.
Okay.
It's okay.
Positively, right?
Positive,
Yeah.
right? Because the thing is this, right? After being in business for so long, I know what it takes, right? To be really committed to your business and sometimes having to make that very difficult choices, right? To put your business first before your family time and things like that, right? I mean,
Sacrifices.
sacrifices is just a reality, right? And I view these questions, as something, if I was going to part with my money into your business, I want to make sure that you have all this, you've thought about all this and you've got backup plans and you've got all that. So after, taking that kind of perspective and the ability to explain to them, and I find them actually,
Receptive.
All right. Yeah.
Which is exactly what you said, they're ignorant.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's okay because, that's how they were brought up. That's the situation around them. They have not seen much of, how women manage many
Exactly.
things also.
Because we don't have enough
Right.
women entrepreneurs,
Yeah.
right?
That comes to the question about your contribution, and in basically Asian women.
Women.
Yeah. So maybe you can talk a little bit about it.
So I always feel like, you require the network, right?
Right.
In any kind of businesses. And AWEN or ASEAN Women Entrepreneur Network actually is a platform to connect the regional entrepreneurs. And whenever there's network, there's always opportunities. And in the region, we're talking about, trying to create an environment, an ecosystem that's, enabling for women entrepreneurs across the region to cross-sell, to trade, to learn from success stories and case studies and things like that, right? And that's one of the things that we're doing. But more importantly also, I think there's an opportunity for us to create an investor network from ASEAN Women Network alone,
Yeah.
right? And Women Angel Network together with the mentoring network that can also open up opportunities for businesses in their market, right? And I think that's the main reason why AWEN was created and something that I'm championing here in
Yeah.
Malaysia lah.
It's pretty excellent, right? It's giving back, and it's also what Endeavor is all about, giving back. And I think it resonates. You had a startup, you went through all the problems, you saw the deficiency that the system had in women, and now with the AWEN Asian Women Network, and you're giving it back, right? So contributions and your role in this part, how did you actually came into this?
It was way back when I was running my previous businesses also. I've been always very active in the, women economic empowerment punya area lah, right? I contribute, I think not just by talking, but also by doing real stuff, right?
Okay.
And I somehow I get recognition from ASEAN, and when ASEAN started to put the idea of having an AWEN network, it is actually under the social pillar of ASEAN.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
And I was then the WENA president, so the Women Entrepreneur Network Malaysia president,
Okay.
right? And WENA was part of the AWEN setup, and I became the chair for Malaysia, and I still am the chair for Malaysia
Okay.
right now. So yeah, my role was to, and still is to bring, Malaysian women entrepreneurs into the regional network and to bring the regional connection back to Malaysia. But also influence certain policies around, ASEAN and even the
Okay.
country.
How many members you have right now in
10
Malaysia?
number countries. Or in Malaysia
In
alone, Malaysia's membership is actually by association. So we wanted to make sure that, we're not exclusive to certain people.
Yeah. Right.
We have to be very inclusive. So we work with, other association to make sure that we can trickle down all the information, programs and stuff lah.
Oh.
Okay. Interesting. I mean, that's another interesting part of what you do. It's almost a full circle now.
Yeah, so I also don't know why I do so many things, but they just become so important, everything.
Yeah, I mean the fulfillment, right? Doing something and
Yes.
not giving back. Okay, let's maybe turn around a little bit and come back to your Kiddocare journey, right? Maybe what we'd like to hear about some impactful stories that you have gone through. Some positive impact from parents, caregivers. Some of your favorite stories, and also what's the future of Kiddocare?
If we talk about impact. Remember I told you that I almost discontinued Kido Care in
Correct.
2021, right? And it was a very hard time. I mean, we were going through the pandemic, and even though Kido Care was allowed to provide services to the frontliners. We were providing services at a very subsidized price, and that was coming out of my pocket.
Wow,
Yes,
okay.
yes. Because I have, lah, sometimes, entrepreneurs ni kan, dia macam, kata macam foolish, dia tak tentu pasal tau.
Don't worry, we are both entrepreneurs here as well, and we share what you're saying.
Yeah.
We hear you.
You just have this
Foolish tak
belief.
terpasal tu, betul lah. It
kan?
really resonates with me a lot.
You have this belief that, it's just a matter of time when this is going to, take off and things like that, right? But then you have the MCO against you, and you figure like, okay lah, I can show traction, people demand, memang
Gain
orang
market
nak
share.
gain market share kan. Okay, we'll give discount so that they can take the surveys, then they will talk about it, right? And then like MCO got started to like expand lagi panjang, right? So then, after a while, you run out of money lah.
Yeah, how deep is deep, right?
Right, you dig a hole so deep, right? And it was so bad that I was actually, taking loans from loan sharks and
Wow.
stuff like that. It was
From loan sharks?
Yes.
Oh, God. Wow, thanks for sharing. I mean,
Oh,
people really should understand
Wow.
it's not an easy
It wasn't.
where you are today.
It
Yeah,
wasn't.
wow.
And
Wow.
and it was something, I would discourage
Yeah,
other
yeah.
entrepreneurs to go that route.
Yeah.
But this belief in me that, the pandemic was going to end, and, and we were actually pitching for investor, right? And I had to show the investor that, I've got things under control, the company was strong and healthy, but it was taking such a big toll on me and my family, right? And I nearly closed down the business because I couldn't take it anymore. Up to the extent when I was thinking, if I die, my insurance money will keep my family afloat for many years, rather than, me living and putting everybody into this trouble lah. That was a very hard call for me at that time. I was really very alone. And then suddenly I received a message from a customer who was a doctor working in the COVID punya ward tau. And she had 2 sets of twins below the age of 4. And she reached out to me and said, Nadira, you really saved my life. And I said, oh yeah, very happy to support. She said, no, you literally saved my life.
Okay.
And then she gave me a call and she said, she was going through depression and really burnt out, having to deal with the COVID. That having twins, marriage also goyang already and things like that, and she was actually thinking of taking the life, her life or the life of her children.
Oh
right?
my God.
It was that bad at that time, right? And she actually found out about us because she was trying to like Google how to take your life,
Oh my God.
and she found us, right?
And she's a doctor. She could find ways to take
She's
your
a
life,
doctor, right?
We're thinking, yeah.
And I just
It's quite chilling listening to the story, and I'm driving, and it's like,
imagine having
I'm having goosebumps. You can see that.
Because Bukit Tekong was very...
Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, it's really chilling to hear things like this, right?
Yes,
Yeah, wow.
can you imagine, right? If I closed down the business, if Kiddocare wasn't there, right? And then I just held that I just had that whole macam epiphany tau. Macam, I cannot stop doing what I'm doing. I know it's tough for me, but it's tougher for some other people out there. And this is really, really needed. In fact, I it shifted the way I look at the pandemic as something that was troubling us to actually something that was giving us that opportunity to, really show our worth, right? And that's one of the most impactful stories that I had, and really significantly changed the way we work and the things we do, and geared us or rather fuel our speed also, because we want to make sure we can address this, right? And then during the pandemic there were just so many different stories, right? And being able to come in and help a family go through the demise of their mother, and how the children actually have to cope, and parents going through divorce, and our caregivers were there, giving attention to their children. These are all, so many stories on a daily basis, lah, guys.
Yeah, I mean,
so many.
Really
And-
hearing this impact from you, I mean, it's really, I'm a bit emotional at the moment because, we're all parents. I also have a twin, and we know every family goes through up and down, depression, this and all that.
Yeah.
And sometimes you don't know what that really saves you, right? And listening to what you just said just now, I mean, it's wow, I'm just kind of speechless at the moment.
Yeah, it is
I'm impacted by it. I'm quite impacted by it at the moment.
truly
I'm just
humbling lah, the stories
Yeah.
that we hear kan, and that's just from the parents and not from the caregivers. Lagi kan, from the caregivers punya perspective, and many of them at that time during the pandemic kan, was displaced of their jobs. Many of them from hospitality, airline, cabin crew, and things like that.
yeah.
And we were able to hire so many and give them jobs and their livelihoods. And one of our caregivers actually invested in ladang kambing tau. Yeah, and she's still doing caregiving job, and she invested, and she now owns a farming, apa nama ni, lamb farming.
Okay.
Tau. I have carers who have never traveled before 20 years of her married life and managed to bring her family for a travel outside the country for the very first time. Nannies who are able to put their children in universities, in school.
Wow.
So it's just so much of this impact, and it's wonderful to just have
Fulfilling,
the
right?
opportunity to do this through our platform lah.
Okay. Before we have a next break, I mean, things is like, you have shared so many stuff and engaging stuff with the caregivers, just one last thing. Currently in your platform, the number of caregivers that you have, and how is the growth rate moving towards, is it growing exponentially? That's
It
number one.
is.
And also, are there caregivers doing this for fun, not for the money?
For the passion in their children, yes.
Okay.
Yes, we do. So number one, back to your first question, yes, it has been an exponential growth in terms of the interest of people wanting to come into the field, right? And I think, we're here to also change the landscape because, before this also ada like the perasu-perasu you send to, makcik here, makcik there, and things like that, right? But now they're starting to realize the importance of having somebody to take care of them too, putting the insurance in place and then the SOPs in place. And before this, it was always like, jaga anak ni kerja tolong-tolong, right? It just tolong-tolong lah. Like, there's no career path. There's no real value in it. But Alhamdulillah, we've been so far able to create, the caregiving job as something that's professional.
And a
very
different perspective,
valuable,
right?
And different perspective. So, last time it was very difficult to get the younger generation to come in and work as caregivers, right? You always get the artists lah.
True.
But now you have more of the younger generation wanting to come in and do this not just for the money but for the passion, right? Seeing children grow, how they contribute into their lives. So, I must say that we've got thousands of applications per month.
Thousands of applications per
Thousands.
month.
Again, just before we end for the break, what's the number you have now, caregivers?
In our database now, registered with us about 12,000.
Wow!
12,000.
Can you imagine that before we 12,000? Impressive number, Nadira.
Thank
Really
you.
impressive. Right, okay, we'll
2001 lah. So that's gonna sign up.
I've been touched, I've been impressed, and probably have a go.
New many.
Money.
Let's come back again and let's try to develop on other stuff on Endeavor, right?
Sure. And I thought that was also very crucial to our scale up journey, right? Because we were on that growth trajectory again. And I felt like, we went in at that right time where we needed perspective from other people and the right people who has been there, done that, and can really open up those kind of perspective lah kan. And yeah, I think that's the real strength of actually being in the network of Endeavor is the people who are there. And not just people who are entrepreneurs, but also the team, Adlin. Your team is amazing. Like,
Wow.
they are
And that's amazing. I don't know that. Really?
really supportive kan. And I like the fact that they are also young and they give a lot of ideas as well. Right? And I just feel that coming from everyone in Endeavor, truly wanting to support. So yeah, I'm happy. Thank you so much for having us. There are actually more days that you wake up feeling sluggish and you feel like, you've got the whole
Burnout.
world against
Yeah.
you, burnt out. You just want to take that extra, minute of sleep where you cannot, But you go back to realizing why you're in this, right? and accepting the fact that challenges will happen, and it happens because it is meant to happen. Challenges are there basically kan, after so long of being in the entrepreneur journey that I actually embrace challenges because to me it's a checklist. And then here comes Endeavor with a network of mentors, and the mentors that you paired us with were really amazing people, and they were really contributing to the thoughts that we already have, validating, giving you ideas and whatnot. And so if you're asking me if we were in Endeavor, I didn't meet those kind of those individuals, right? I think maybe we would not be making certain decisions we made, right? That could probably, not gotten our traction or our growth to be this fast.